Hello and welcome back to another edition of CGSP Briefing. This is the show where we take a topical news item from the day or this week, and we want to give you a hot take from one of our editors. And today, I'm joined by my good friend, Africa editor Jeronima from the beautiful island of Mauritius. A very good afternoon. Good afternoon to you, Jérôme.
Good afternoon. Good evening to you, Eric.
Okay, so you are fired up today. I mean, really just fired up today. For those of you in the Africa space, the big event of this week was the big luncheon that took place at the White House with the President of the United States and 5 African leaders from West Africa, from Gabon, Liberia, Mauritania, Senegal, and Guinea-Bissau. This was quite a spectacle. But before we get into what got you very, very upset about what you saw, kind of lay the groundwork for what happened and give us some insight on why you think these 5 countries, because these are not the 5 countries that I think would have come to mind first that would have had a small group meeting with the US president in the White House.
So yes, that's mini summit was quite surprising because let's face it, we've been waiting for the big event that's going to come, I think, later this year or next year about the US Africa summit. And when this one was announced, people are kind of speculating on why we'd have those 5 small GDP countries being part of a face-to-face with Donald Trump. So here we have a mix of many issues that are playing out in behind the scene into the conversation. We should be expecting conversation around Chinese presence in the region, because we do know that for quite some time we had the issue in Pentagon and the anxiety in the White House that maybe China is intending to build a naval base on the Atlantic coast. And countries that have been on the radar was Gabon and the Equatorial Guinea, which is not part of the conversation, but Gabon was there, Senegal as well. We also talk about the security, maritime security in the Gulf of Guinea. That has been an immense issue for both the Chinese and the United States. And China, because of that, has ramped up this security cooperation with those states into how they work together into guaranteeing the security of Chinese vessel in the area. We also have that Norinco has opened offices in Senegal and expanding its offices in Western Africa and selling more and more Chinese weapons in the region. So we have all those kind of issues related to China's presence, but also related to the US security issues when we talk about the Sahel region, where we see Islamist group expanding from the north of Senegal, coming down and reaching to Benin and all those regions. Those are the few issues that are really part of the concern that the United States are wanting to have those countries. Let's not forget natural resources on the table. When you do have Gabon with manganese, when you do have Mauritania with manganese as well, with reserve of manganese, you have all those countries that really have pretty much everything that would attract now the US toward its policy in Africa. That's why we had all those 5 countries on the table. And last but not least, the issue of drug in Guinea-Bissau. That also is a big issue when you know how much the United States has been fighting that all over the world. So yeah, now, those are maybe the issues that were on the table.
Well, they might have been on the table between the United States and these 5 countries, but they were certainly not in the discussion that took place at the luncheon on Wednesday. And this is what got you kind of worked up, because everything that you've detailed here is really legitimate diplomatic concern between both the United States and Africa more broadly, but on a bilateral level with each of these individual countries. Also, very important to mention that you've conflated 2 very different things here. You've talked about the U.S. security relationship with African countries, and then we have the political relationship. Those seem to be operating in 2 very distinct channels, if you will. There's a lot more stability on the security side between the Pentagon and these African countries than there is on the political side. Let's remind everybody that the United States cut USAID, which directly impacted these countries. When we look at the number of countries that are on the proposed travel ban, 4 of the 5 countries at that table are listed on the travel ban, on the proposed travel ban. Okay. Yeah. So just keep that in mind. And by the way, the Senegalese women's basketball team that was supposed to compete in the United States was denied entry because on visa grounds. So just keep that in mind. You then decided to write a very fiery column saying a display of power, not partnership in Washington. And I want to get into what was so remarkable for you on what you saw, and you draw some comparisons with the Chinese. But before we get into that, I want to play a few sound bites from the lunch that kind of inspired your frustration to what you saw.
Dans le domaine de la mer. Je ne veux pas être long.
So the president's giving a wrap-up signal to everybody.
But I appreciate it very much. I appreciate it. Maybe we're going to have to go a little bit quicker than this because we have a whole schedule. If you like to, at some point I would like to go to Africa. Absolutely. We're going to see what the schedule is, but at some point I would like to do that very much.
Because we are committed to that. And we just want to thank you so much for this opportunity.
Well, thank you. It's such good English, such beautiful. Where did you learn to speak so beautifully? Where were you educated? Where?
Yes, sir.
In Liberia.
Yes, sir.
Well, that's very interesting. It's beautiful English.
Sure.
I have people at this table can't speak nearly as well.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you so much, Mr. President.
Okay, so there you have the wrap up there. Sorry about the technical difficulties. You have the wrap up hand gesture, which you may not have seen. You have him saying, we don't have a lot of time, rushing them. First of all, the fact that they met in a group is also, again, an American phenomenon that they tend to do. This is not just, by the way, Trump who's done this. Biden met them in groups and so on forth. Something that doesn't happen in other countries for the most part, particularly major powers. And then there was a lot of talk and praise and just effusive praise of the president and his golf game, suggesting he should be awarded a Nobel Prize. And again, none of the devastation that the president's actions have caused. And by the way, he made a reference to USAID.
Exactly,
he said it was fraud, waste, and abuse. And these countries have been suffering directly from that cut. And of course, no mention of the visa bans or any of this. Now, you don't expect visiting heads of state to come in, particularly in a public setting like this. But you said in your column that this was a blatant lack of diplomatic decorum that was disrespectful. Tell us what you were thinking.
Exactly. I got really frustrated, and that frustration has been building up since a few months ago when Cyril Ramaphosa went to United States, and we saw something quite similar happening with the ambush of the videos and all of that happening in the White House. And later on, we saw now what happened yesterday, the wrapping up gestures and the comment, the patronizing and condescending, what I call condescending comment on like, you are good, your English is good level and all of that. And to say, we have to go and
to a Liberian president, by the way, which hasn't. I mean, it was so clear he didn't know the history.
Exactly,
both the United States and Liberia, which have an intimate history, given that Liberia was formed by ex-American slaves. I mean, so to suggest that they speak English beautifully is just, again, a little bit surreal.
That just be wrapped up in the sense where, and let you mention President Diomaye Faye from Senegal, who mentioned the golf skills of Donald Trump. And I was so shocked. I was like, you are coming from this mini summit. There was a way for you to portray or to display yourself with very diplomatic decorum in a sense where you do mention the issue that are bilateral interests for the two countries and you move away. You move on like 2-3 minutes and that's it. You did not have to come and do, advocating for him to get Nobel Peace Prize for something that's still ongoing. You do not come and say, you know what, you have a good golf skills. And I even wonder where Bassirou Diomaye Faye saw Donald Trump playing golf to the point of, praising his golf skills and say, you should come into Senegal and build a golf course in Senegal. It was really frustrating to me because it was a display of ego boosting of, we are here to serve you. We are here. We are very grateful for you, for everything that you've done for us, for how you invited us. We are happy, few privileged to sitting here on the table for you to take your time to welcome us. It was really frustrating to me. And I'm not even mentioning himself, the way he was, talking to them, the way he was mentioning all those issues without the minimum decorum that comes with diplomacy. That for me was frustrating, very much at the core.
I want to read something from your column here. And you said at the end, as if all of that isn't bad enough, everything that you've detailed out. The worst part for me was how this episode triggered painful memories of Africa's recent past, when leaders like this group would go to European capitals to fawn over their colonial masters with equal amounts of praising and ego boosting as what we saw in that dining room on Wednesday. White master, black servant. Tell us about that.
Exactly. It really took me to those places where, as I've mentioned, the fight of the Lumumbas, the Nkurumas, where we talk about Africa dignity, Africa freedom, Africa united. All of that did not happen. Where our founding fathers were fighting for us standing as equal to white people, as standing equal as with powerful country, to stand tall and talk about our issue with responsibility. That we do not have to go and beg. We do not have to go and do the lap dancing for us to be heard. We can be standing and talking responsibly and having those conversations face to face with any kind of head of state without having ourselves to humiliate ourselves, to kind of lose dignity of who we are. And that for me was deeply frustrating. And I was like, why to go to that lengthy process, a humiliating process to do that, and to get what at the end? To really get what at the end? Because at the end, I'm pretty much sure they will not get what they're expecting they would get out of this meeting. And that just humiliating.
These 5 countries do almost no trade with the United States.
Exactly.
These countries attract almost no investment. Remember, these are some of the poorest countries, least developed countries in Africa. These countries were some of the most dependent on U.S. aid that is no longer there. And 4 out of these 5 countries are subject to a travel ban. So even if there was something to come of this, the travel ban may actually prevent that from happening, because at the end of the day, if you can't travel places and meet people, it's hard to sign deals.
Exactly.
Now, the reason why this is interesting for us is obviously this is a U.S.-Africa thing, but you drew some very stark comparisons with how leaders like this are treated in Beijing. And we want to make it very clear that you're not necessarily saying that the Chinese are demanding less flattery and less ego boosting. They just don't do it in public the same way. And that the way that the Chinese would deal with a group of leaders like this would be radically different. Talk to us about the contrast with the Chinese side of things.
And the contrast comes from when we look into how those head of states are welcomed when they go to Beijing, being big country or small country. You being Bissau, Guinea, and we remember that we saw that last year when he was visiting, and we even saw that when he went to FOCAC. You coming from Senegal, and a few weeks ago we had Ousmane Sonko from Senegal, Prime Minister of Senegal, visiting Beijing
this
as
year.
well.
This is William Ruto.
Yeah.
So this is what it looks like.
Exactly. When they go to Beijing, at the end, they all meet Xi Jinping. And that's really interesting, because one of the countries I did not mention in the column is the fact that many African head of state, they go to Washington, D.C. 3-4 times, and sometimes they don't even meet the one who's in the White House. But in Beijing, they all meet Xi Jinping. So when you look at the treatment they receive in China, the protocol, the pageantry, all the grandiose display of respect, it's something that speaks a lot into the narrative of like China saying, we treat you as equal, we treat you with respect. We don't care how big or small you are. When you come to Beijing as a head of state, we're going to give you the respect and the honor that you deserve as head of state. We will not be having you, Xi Jinping, saying, you know what, you have to wrap up. You will not having Lin Xiang say, you know what, we have to wrap, you are talking too much. No, we will treat you as head of state. And one of the contrasts I really mentioned in the case here, because we have Bassirou Diomaye Faye from Senegal, is the fact that few weeks ago, his prime minister, Ousmane Sonko, was in Beijing. He met with Chinese Prime Minister Li Qiang. He could have stopped there because he's not the head of state. But
that's right, head of government. So it's peer to peer. So his peer is Li Qiang, who's the head of government. Xi Jinping is a higher rank, so wouldn't be obligated to meet him.
But it's managed to meet him, to have a face-to-face with him. And that is very a stark difference when you see what we saw yesterday. And that to me was like, if we want to have this US-Africa relationship, it's really time to bring back some decorum in our relationship, to tone down the condescending, patronizing tone, to look ourselves as equal even though in the fact that we can debate we're not equal, but we have to at least, from a diplomatic perspective, maintain that decorum in our relationship. And that was the idea I wanted to convey in this column. That really, really got me mad and upset in the way things happened yesterday.
And let me point one other thing out, is that we just saw the diplomatic treatment for Ruto. What they do in Beijing is that all of the visiting leaders get the same treatment. So you just saw Ruto. Here is Emmanuel Macron from France, so a P5 Security Council member. And again, please, I can see the comments coming on YouTube already. Do not take this as saying, oh my God, China's the best, China's great, America sucks. The point here is that what we saw on display in that lunchroom, in the state dining room, was a lack of decorum. And for these leaders that are making choices in how and where they align their foreign policies, the way that they are treated matters. Now, at least for some, obviously not necessarily for these five. But I do think it's interesting that what we saw with Ruto in Beijing in the welcoming ceremony is literally, if you didn't know that was Macron, you would think that's the same leader. Now, every leader gets this treatment.
Some treatment.
The honor guard, the flag on Tiananmen Square, the driving down Chang'an Avenue. This protocol and this decorum for a lot of countries matters. The American informality, which again plays very well for us and our culture, but it does not play so well in other parts of the world. And I agree with you. What we saw in Washington was. I don't know what it is. I don't know what were they thinking they were going to get out of this. Okay, let's move on. Let's close up our conversation on a kind of a more practical note. If you are the president or prime minister of country X in Africa, and the U.S. embassy calls you up and says, you're the head of protocol, you're the head of the government, whatever. And they say, listen, we want your top guy to be in Washington on Wednesday for a lunch. Okay. You don't say no to that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the president of the United States. It's camera time. You saw what happened with Cyril Ramaphosa. So you go in with some open eyes, but you don't say no. How do you think they should have comported themselves given what they did, which was just embarrassing, but in terms of how you think, what could they have done instead? They're at that lunch, they're with Donald Trump, he's saying these ridiculous things, he's giving the finger wrap up, he wants praise for a Nobel Prize. What do you recommend? What should they have done instead?
Oh, for me, it was quite simple. You arrived. Thank you, Mr. President, for your invitation. It was an honor to be received here. We are looking forward to talk about issues of our bilateral interest. We do know that each bilateral relation comes with ups and downs, and we do hope that we're going to find a way to resolve our different and common issues in a very peaceful way, in a way that advance our both relationship. That's it. A short message like this, 1-2 minutes, that's it. We don't need to go praising people's golfing games and all of that. We don't need to do. Especially when you look into the agenda, you have the feeling that they are not the one who called that meeting. So they were being called to come to this meeting. So basically, they did not come. We say, I know why I'm calling. I'm coming somehow to talk about issues that interest to the United States. So you are not there to be begging and asking. You come there very diplomatic. Say, yes, very well, welcome to be here. I'm really honored. And let's talk about our common issues and move forward for that. Why do I need to mention your golfing game?
Yeah. And again, you would not have offended the president that way.
Exactly.
I mean, you would have just been it just would have been much more professional and much less effusive. And again, you don't have to show any negativity, but you don't have to go over the top in just this effusiveness.
This is one thing I've mentioned in part of the column. And say, at the end, when you are China, you look at those kind of things, you kind of wonder, why do we bother even doing that for African countries at the end? Why we should be bothering? I know they will keep on doing that, but at some point you're like, why? Why at the end? Why at the end you cannot uphold your own dignity in a sense where, we come and you talk as head of states, and I'm a small country. I'm not pretending that I'm a big country, but I will not be bending to your qualms to the point of me praising your personal issue. I was like one of them would have praised his haircut and say, you have a very nice haircut at this point.
Okay. Well, the article is a display of power, not partnership in Washington, is a scathing critique of what he saw. Again, probably blaming more the African leaders than Donald Trump, because we know what Donald Trump is. And,
exactly.
you know, I mean, again, Donald Trump has no secrets here. So you go into this, and I think just, again, I think your critique, just to be very clear for everybody who hasn't read the article, is much more on the behavior of those African leaders. And so that is, you know, that's where we are. So it's over on the website at ChinaGlobalSouth.com. Giraud, thank you so much for the great column and for joining us today and for the passion and all of this. Of course, I think we're going to generate quite a few comments today for this show, but would love to hear what everybody thinks. Keep it light, keep it civil. By the way, we don't allow any swear words in our comments. So if you drop an S-bomb or an F-bomb, you're going to get deleted. So just be a heads up on that. But other than that, we'd love to have the conversation of what did you think? Who do you hold responsible for this? Maybe you disagree with Giraud, and you
maybe it was good for you.
And at the same time, they did what they had to do to survive. Because at the end of the day, if you don't praise Trump this way, you may get the same treatment that Ramaphosa got. And that's something they all want to avoid. And maybe they didn't expect anything out of this, but they figured, you know, maybe I can get a golf course in Senegal. Who knows? It's worth it.
Who's going to play golf course? Only rich people. You are coming to find investment for your country to build road and infrastructure.
Hey, listen, hold on. Here in Southeast Asia, the Trump family signed a $1.5 billion golf course deal in Vietnam. And let me remind you that Vietnam is at the halfway development point of Africa. So,
yeah,
okay.
That's not the example
there you go.
That's really not the example to emulate. Yeah,
it's not that far off and crazy as you're talking about. So
exactly.
We'll be back next week with another CGSP briefing. And for everybody, again, check out what we're doing over on the site at ChinaGlobalSouth.com. And thank you very much, Giraud. We'll see you again very soon.
Thank you.